Hello everyone, welcome to Fishin, the podcast where we discuss Standard's most floppy tribe and help the whole community become better Merfolk players. I'm Kody, I'm one of the co-hosts of the show, and you can find me on Twitter as @NotKodySmith. And we are joined, as always, by my co-host, Matt. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing great tonight, Kody. Happy belated Father's Day. For us tonight, it's the Monday after Father's Day. For you people who are going to listen in the future, it is way past Father's Day, so I'm incredibly late wishing it to Kody.
Well, happy Father's Day to you as well, Matt. We both have little young pairs of pattering feet running around our house, and the incessant pattering is almost deafening. When you hear it at 5 a.m, it's just it's the worst.
Sometimes when I just want to die because my son is just being that bad, I think to myself, at least I'm not Kody who has 3.
That's fair. We're waiting for a little while to go for the playset. That's going to be kind of a big deal, you know. That's
a heavy investment, sir. That's a heavy investment.
But with 3 kids, I can have a commander pot of 4. So I think that's a pretty solid starting point. So I mean, we have a special guest, but we're going to do our little housekeeping. Find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook as FishcastMTG. And on Patreon at patreon.com/fishcastmtg, where we have a new patron, and actually it's a fellow content creator that we've advertised on this show, and it's Zuby from Magic with Zuby. So thank you, Zuby, for patroning us, and he picked a random merfolk for us, so we're going to discuss that in a moment. But we do want to discuss that a few things that were kind of going on with Patreon. We made a Patreon Discord, so you can, even at the lowest point, $1, you can be a part of the Fishcast or the Fishin, a Merfolk Podcast Patreon only Discord and talk to us and have unlimited access, and it'll be a great time. We'll all talk Merfolk and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing we want to talk about is a good friend of the show's, Wedge, was recently injured in GP Vegas. I guess it's an injury that's been going on for a while. I want to make note that he does have a GoFundMe going on right now, and I'm not sure where it's at, but I know Kody and I have both donated to it. And he's just a really, really good person. He's reached out to us as an incredibly small podcast and given us some advice. So I would urge you all, please, if you could just donate a little bit. Those medical bills are no joke, and he's hurting. So we as a community, let's help pick him back up.
Yeah, we saw on his Twitter, he posted a picture of him walking today, so that's really cool that he's getting back on his feet, and especially being so far from home, that definitely stinks. So we're going to be putting forward everything on our Patreon for the month of June to help with that GoFundMe. So we're going to be donating a little bit of the money that you've given to us to give to him, you know, as kind of a token of our appreciation for all the help he's given us.
On top of some personal money from our family coffers.
Yeah, yes.
We're not just donating your money. We're giving what we can.
And so to go into a lighter topic, we have a very special guest. He's played Merfolk in Standard for some time, and he actually is one of the architects of our artwork that we've used on literally everything, that our branding.
We say his name every week, and you guys finally get to talk to him. Well, get to listen to him silently and not talk back.
So please welcome to the show, Hunter Pruitt.
Hey guys, what's going on?
Yeah,
Yay, Hunter.
How's it going, man?
It's going well. Living life out here in the deserts of California, and happy to be talking fish.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, Hunter is a distinguished member of the United States Marine Corps, and myself being a member of previous member of the U.S. Navy who spent some time with the Marine Corps, we kind of had that special, we would talk to each other and send each other like little memes and whatnot. So thank you so much for coming on the show. We really do appreciate because we have a very narrow window of standard, and we want to have somebody that's played standard pretty extensively to talk to us. So before we go in, we're going to go into the random Merfolk, which Zuby picked out for us. And he picked a kind of one of the further ones that we've ever had. He picked random Merfolk number 198, which is actually a very recent printing. Again, we've had a lot of kind of more recent stuff. Hey Hunter, do you want to read this card, because it's a standard Merfolk?
It is a standard Merfolk. I would love to. This Merfolk is Tempest Caller. For 2 and 2 blue, you get a 2/3 Merfolk Wizard, and when it enters the battlefield, you tap all creatures target opponent controls.
Yeah, so I mean, what do you think about this card? I mean, I actually kind of like it.
I've run into it a couple of times in the mirror match in standard, actually, and I'm not running it, and sometimes I feel like I should be, especially when you're against a creature-based deck, which there aren't a ton of in standard right now. But if you have this as like a sideboard option against something that gets a couple of creatures out, and you can tap down that like Lyra that you can't get through because it's a 5/5 flyer and you don't have a fish that big anywhere in your deck. If you can pull out a Tempest Caller, you can sneak those last couple of points of damage through. And I've seen Tempest Caller take a couple of games. So this fish is something to watch out for in standard for sure.
Every time I see this card, I just think to myself, why don't you have Flash? Just why don't you have Flash?
Exactly.
Yeah, I would pay 5 for this creature if it had Flash.
I don't know if I do that, but I mean, 2 blue and 2 for Flash and the same thing. Maybe make it a 2/2 instead of a 2/3, or like a 1/3 or something like that.
Make it a 2/2.
Nerf its power toughness. Yeah.
Like
if you staple Flash onto this thing, it's in every deck. It's in every standard Merfolk deck because it would be insane. So right now, I think it's a good sideboard option. Like you said, if it had Flash, I'd be jamming 4 of it in every list I could get it in.
Yeah, I've played this to some extent in Arena, and it's, as Hunter said, it's a game ender. You've been poking in with your your Mistcloaked Heralds and your I forgot what the other Merfolk is that's unblockable.
River Sneak.
River Sneak, yeah, River Sneak, and so you're getting your hits in. So you've got them down to 9-8 ish life. But you've been kind of building up your board and you haven't been attacking because, you can't quite get through. And if you can just you can blow them out just by tapping their board and just swinging in with the team.
I will say this thing has some banging flavor text. I am the storm. Direct to the point.
Yep.
And Tempest. So Tempest Caller, I honestly am not. I wouldn't be ashamed to jam in a commander deck just as a, you know what? No, you're dead. I mean, it's only one opponent, so it's kind of less useful in Commander, but still, I do think it's very good.
Hey, put in your stasis deck.
Yeah,
there you go.
Yeah. It could maybe this could finally be the thing that breaks through. That breaks
Legacy Stasis.
No, I was gonna say Vintage Merfolk because Vintage Merfolk runs Stasis and all that. So it might be.
Wait. There's a Vintage Merfolk deck. I've never seen it.
Oh yeah, there's actually it's been a thing for a while in Vintage, but it uses Root Water Thief and a few other cards, Stasis. Standstill. So it's
we're gonna have to do an episode on it because I'm intrigued.
You're going
now.
way outside my realm.
Yeah,
now.
I honestly don't know much more about it than that, but thank you, Zuby, again for patroning us and helping us.
Good pick.
Yeah, and you picked a good Magic card. I don't think you knew which one you were doing, but it's definitely good, especially on topic. So now that we're through with the random Merfolk, Hunter, tell us about your list.
All right. So my list, which has actually surprised me a couple of times in the past couple of weeks, I've been playtesting this thing a lot. It really focuses around getting down an early Deeproot Elite, and then trying to stick a Deeproot Waters. These two cards together are absolutely nutty in the standard meta right now because you're pumping out hexproof tokens with Deeproot Waters for every Merfolk you cast, and with Elite on board, you're getting a 1/1 counter every time a Merfolk enters the battlefield. So every Merfolk you cast ends up being two separate 1/1 counter triggers off of Deep Root Elite. And when you're playing cheap stuff like Mistbinder, and Kamina is the top end of my deck, really. So at 3 mana, I'm topping out. You can imagine I'm casting like more than one Merfolk a turn. And to be able to pump out these hexproof tokens and pump them up so they can try to survive through some of the red aggro that we're seeing these days in Merfolk, this deck has been really fun. And the thing that's really tipped it for me has been the bestiary, Lifecrafter's bestiary. And it was actually you, Kody, that put me onto this card. I had kind of overlooked it when building this deck. And paying the 1 green, very easy in this deck because we're running 4 Botanical Sanctums, we're running 4 Hinterlands Harbors, we're running Hadana's Climb, which can tap for any mana when we flip it. This thing just gives you card advantage like crazy. And this deck has been able to get there.
We're also running Unclaimed Territory.
Yes,
so basically, mana in this deck is basically perfect.
Yes, about as near to it as you can get with the lands that are in Standard right now. So a very low curve. Like I said, we top out at 3 with Hadana's Climbs and with Kamina's. But that's really what we need. Kamina is an absolute monster if she sticks. 3 separate abilities tacked onto this card. All of them can be blowouts, giving you another card draw if you have 3 Merfolk down. And if you have those Deep Root Waters down, hitting 5 Merfolk is very easy. And all of a sudden, all your Merfolk get another 1/1 counter, and things get out of hand really quickly for your opponent.
Now, Kody, you're going to post this list to our Twitter, correct?
Yeah, I'll post it in the Discord and on Twitter and in the show notes as well. So people can kind of review, go along with us in this deck list.
Plagiarism is the most sincere form of flattery. So
yeah, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
There
whatever.
Yeah,
there it is.
I was in the ballpark.
Everything is everything. But so Hunter, you've actually kind of named off basically all of the deck. I mean, you have Kamena, you have our dreadful Lord and Savior Merfolk Mistbinder. Crazy stuff. Silvergill Adepts drawing you cards. Are you running Kumena Speaker and Merfolk Branchwalker?
I actually cut the Branchwalkers for Jade Light Rangers, kind of the upgraded version of the Branchwalker. The Explore Twice really gets you through some of the land chunks in this deck. There are times when you really just don't want to see a land, and putting it into your hand is even better than having to graveyard it. So Jade Light Rangers took the spot of Branchwalkers for me, and I'm actually not running Kamina Speakers. The rest of my deck that I didn't mention is kind of my Instance and Sorcery suite that I'm running here. And it's your standard stuff like Blossoming Defenses. I'm running Syncopates because I do find myself with a lot of open mana. And I'm actually mainboarding 2 Spell Pierces because those they can be a blowout. If somebody taps out for a Settle the Wreckage against your little Merfolk army of tokens, and you can Spell Pierce that Settle, it's a scoop most of the time, honestly. So mainboarding 2 Spell Pierces has been another little something that I've been trying lately, and I like it a lot.
One card, and I might have missed it when you were talking. Do we have Merfolk Trickster in your list?
Of course. I am running 3 copies of the Trickster. I had it at 4, but there are some times in matchups, like I was talking about, the blue-white control, they don't play any creatures. They may play 1 Torrential Glurkhulk at the most. So at those times, the Trickster, it doesn't feel great. It is a creature that you can flash in if they do tap out on their turn, and you can get extra tokens off of the Deep Root Waters or the 1/1 counters off the Elite on the end of their turn, which is a nice surprise when you untap with these now bigger creatures. But Trickster sometimes just feels like a dead card in your hand when they don't have any creatures on board. So
now I've actually kind of felt somewhat the same about Trickster in Legacy, where there are definitely times where Merfolk Trickster's abilities, Merfolk Trickster is a very strong magic card, but there are times where it's basically just a flash bear, and flash bears are fine, but
there's nothing wrong with they're ambush vipers at that point, aren't they?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, it's basically Ambush Viper, and Ambush Viper is fine. It's a fine magic card, but I mean, there's some times where it's simply Ambush Viper, and it doesn't add to your game plan, which is kind of unfortunate.
Although, there are times when I would much rather be holding like another Kamina or another, Lifecrafter's bestiary, and if I'm drawing that Trickster in the place of those, that's not the card advantage I needed, and that can have me drawing dead. So that's why I kept Trickster to 3. I think it's a good number. Like I said, it gets me through where I need it, and sometimes when it is just an ambush viper, it still works. So
Yeah, and so you recently took this deck to a PPTQ, is that correct?
that is correct. I did.
So
Um,
can you tell us about some of the notable matches that you faced against? I mean, this was prior to Pro Tour Dominaria, correct?
it
Well,
was
actually,
same weekend actually.
I was going to say before you go into the details of how you did, how did you feel overall?
Um, Man, I like this deck a lot, and I think right now the only thing holding it back is just how, like, I don't want to say control heavy or aggro heavy, but just where the meta is at in general. I think Merfolk is right there on the doorstep of being tier one in standard. And depending on what happens post rotation, I really think it can get there. Me and the guys that I play with, I won't call us a team because there's like 6 of us and we're not really anything organized at all. But we've been talking about it a lot, and we really think that Merfolk is just like one card away, like depending on what happens post rotation or depending on a reprint we may get in the core set that we haven't seen yet. We feel like it's just right there, missing one thing, and Merfolk could be a real contender in standard. So I felt pretty good going into it, and even coming out of it, I didn't do as well as I would have liked. And some of that's on me, and some of that is just on the meta that I ended up in that PPTQ and some of the matches that I drew. But I really like where Merfolk is at, and I really think, given just a little push, that it's going to be there and it's going to be a serious competitor in standard.
And I just checked the Fishin email, which is fishcastmtg@gmail.com, and I have not received our official spoiler from Wizards, so I cannot be sure that there's another good reprint coming in this core set, M19. Please talk to us, Wizards. We promise we will take the greatest of care with your Merfolk. So we when you came in, you have a strong deck. You've been doing well at FNM and stuff like that, and you went into this PPTQ. How did you do overall?
So I ended the day, I think 2-4. So there are some good matchups here and some bad matchups, and I want to start with the good matchups. Merfolk does well into control a lot of the times. Like I said, if you can stick an early deep root waters, they're not running a ton of enchantment removal, and so you can pump out these hexproof tokens. And instead of putting your counters on your fish, like your river sneak that you usually use for the unblockable, you're putting it on the hexproof token, and that really allows you to get a lot of damage through against control decks. And sometimes you're just too much for them to race, even against like approach decks. The 7 life that they were gaining off approach was easily negated the next turn by the amount of tokens that I had on board. I had a good matchup against Green Black Constrictor as well. The Walking Ballista is a lot less effective when he can't ping all my little tokens that are hexproof, and it makes that a lot less advantageous for them getting out a big Walking Ballista. And it's easy to chump some of their bigger stuff with these tokens as well. Now, where we didn't do so hot was against the red and red-black aggro decks that are running rampant in the format right now. Goblin Chainwhirler at the wrong time is just devastating against this deck. It kills your adepts, it kills your deep root elites, it kills your river sneaks. I mean, basically, if you don't have counters on any of your tokens, those things are gone. And it's a 3/3 with first strike, so you don't have any creatures that want to go toe to toe with this thing. So if they land one of those, it's going to be a bad day. The other deck that I just had a real bad time playing against was actually the mono green Stompy list, and I don't know if you guys have seen this. It got really popular really fast. Was still Leaf champion coming into the format. This guy landed a turn 4 Balta against me, and at that point I was just like, hey, good game, man. Like, I'm not getting through that dinosaur. So overall, like, yeah, this is not happening. My fish aren't made of the stuff to get through that. So overall, I think I had a good day. Like I said, I think coming up with the rotation, red is still going to be good. So I'm not sure where Merfolk lands after that, because red is one of the weaker matchups in standard right now. But like I said, I like where Merfolk is. They have a good matchup against a lot of the Teferi decks, the approach decks, things like that. But it's going to need something to push it over the top against red if it really wants to be a competitive deck in the format.
Yeah, no, just kind of looking over some of the lists in the standard from we're gonna go over some of the more recent bigger tournaments that have happened.
Absolutely.
Pro Tour Richmond included in that. We did see a lot of these red decks, and so I think one thing I want to throw out there before we really get into this with Pro Tour Dominaria, we had basically 7 copies of the same deck, variations of this red deck. And while Chain Whirler is a huge problem, for your Merfolk tokens as well as your Silvergill Adepts, and I'm sure it changes how you prioritize, your misbinders and your, even just forcing to put counters on your own deeper elites. One of the things is it has super pushed cards right now. I mean, we have a Braid, we have Glorybringer, we have Chandra, Torch of Defiance, and basically
even Lightning Strike.
It's
a 2-mana bolt, but it does it. Like, it gets there.
And so it's one of those things that a lot of those you alluded to this earlier, Hunter, where we have to kind of hope that with the rotation of a lot of these cards, so we're going to be losing a Braid, Chandra, and Glorybringer. Maybe.
Hazarat.
Yeah. What's that?
Hazarat.
I saw at least 3 copies of Hazarat, and that's rough.
Yeah, so this deck is definitely losing a lot of the pieces that make it what it is right now. So real quickly, let's look at the Pro Tour lists. We only had one Esper control list out of all these red decks.
Right, and I think that is, again, it's that race. And how do you race an on-cop crasher, a Beaumont Courier that's going to refill your hand? That card is nuts. I really underestimated Beaumont Courier, and that thing just always means that the red player is going to have a grip of cards if you can't deal with it early. It's going to come down, it's going to swing, it's going to exile, and then like any time after that, you're looking at wasting a removal spell on something that's just going to get discarded so they get a new grip of cards. Earthshaker Kenra is another card that's going to rotate, is a house in this deck. Like, it comes down and all of a sudden you thought you had good blockers and you thought you were going to be able to get a nice trade, and now you can't block because there's an Earthshaker Kenra on board. And not to mention that card has Eternalize, which gets around your biggest creatures, even when you thought, okay, well, I've got bigger stuff than Earthshaker, so I'm going to be able to block. If they Eternalize it, then you're out of luck. Goblin Chain Whirlers we've talked about. I could go on forever. That card is nutty. Even On-Cop Crasher, that thing is going to go away. Another one of the exert tricks that they have up their sleeve. That's another you can't block type style card. So red is going to lose a lot, but there's a reason you're seeing all these red lists right now, and it really is just like they've turned the format into a race, and it's a race that nobody besides red is winning right now. So control is there, and control's going to be there post-rotation, I think. But red is losing a lot of pieces and is gaining a lot of pieces. We've already seen Goblin reprints that are coming in core set 19 deck. And I think it's still going to be there. I honestly do.
The card you're alluding to is Dark Dweller Oracle. It's 1 red and 1 for a 2/2 Goblin Shaman with 1. Sacrifice a creature, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. And then you have Siege Gang Commander that was printed in Dominaria, who's I saw was in the sideboard of a lot of decks that were top 8ing, but he'll probably just rotate right to the main board because he's still really, really good.
Yeah, that card's nuts.
And there's a ton of new dragons that are coming in that'll probably replace the Glorybringer and Hazarat. So red's still looking really, really strong. We have Gutter Snipe back.
Yeah, that one is nuts.
Yeah, so just the thing is and I've looked into articles by MTG Goldfish and Channel Fireball, and one thing that a lot of people have alluded to is that one of the reasons that these red decks are so good is that they are basically the color that there are the most pushed, uncommons and rares, because a Braid is such a good card right now. I mean, we're still in an artifact set, in a standard with an artifact set, so just being able to destroy target artifact is pretty nuts with a braid. Glorybringer and Chandra are like I said, they're just pushed cards. They're super powerful, and just stringing together all of those cards is kind of a recipe for disaster when you're wanting to beat those decks.
Red by far I think has one of the best top ends, like you were just talking about there. I mean, I've seen the Phoenix, Rekindling Phoenix, another card
which is still going to be there.
Red. Yeah, it's still going to be there. Chandra, Hazoret, Glorybringer. Like right now, the red top end is so much more accessible for their deck, and it's so much faster that like they just dominate. And I think it's going to stay that way.
Well, and I'm cycling through the core spoilers right now, and the amount of goblins that are all playable is insane. You have Goblin Motivator, 1 red for a 1/1 target creature gains haste until the end of turn. Goblin Instigator, when Goblin Instigator enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 Goblin token, so you can sack it to the Shaman that we just talked about. There's this Vishnu Pyromancer, 1 red and 1 for 2/1 when it enters the battlefield, deals 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker. So it's shock on a stick, and you still have shock legal. So
and lightning strike, so it's
I mean, it's impressive. I mean, Gutter Snipe by himself is just stupid. So
there's
one of the things we were kind of talking about off air, and then Kody made us stop because we wanted to bring it up on air, was, I mean, if Chain Whirler gets banned out, does Red take enough of a step back where it's not going to be overpowered?
And you know what? I've thought about that. I can't honestly say yes. Chain Whirler is a big part of that deck, but you have to remember Red got banned out before Chain Whirler was ever printed. They had to ban the Rumnat Ruins and the dinosaur. It slips my name right now. The one that kept you from gaining life and was just silly stats. Red had to be banned before Chain Whirler even came around because that deck was already good. Now Chain Whirler probably pushed it over the top. And
it's much better with Chain Whirler.
Absolutely, and nobody's ever going to tell you that it's not. Chain Whirler is the reason you see 7 out of 8 decks right here on this list being played as red or red-black combination of. Without Chain Whirler, my best guess, you probably see 4 red decks on that list, 3 red decks on that list. Like I said, their top end is still nuts, but Chain Whirler definitely puts it over the top. And I'll be mildly surprised if we don't see some sort of step taken towards Chain Whirler.
Yeah, and I would like to point out that one of our followers on Twitter, Goblin Babblemaster at GBabbleMaster, is probably super happy right now. He makes YouTube videos. He's basically what we do, but for goblins. And I know he just started picking up some steam, so I'm sure he is just like falling asleep with just a big old grin on his face every night with all these wonderful gobos just like rolling in through the spoilers.
So I love goblins, I really do, and I'm actually super excited that goblins is probably gonna be a real deck again. I love legacy goblins. I wish modern goblins would actually be a real thing, but it's just not there. I think that they really should see a ban of Chain Whirler, and I know a lot of people say that you shouldn't ban standard cards, blah blah blah. The truth of the matter is, if there's a card that's breaking the format, and I don't care what format it is, ban it out. If this was Hearthstone, Chain Whirler would get nerfed, or would already have been nerfed. So, since we're not Hearthstone, the card was printed. You need to fix the format. Just ban it. I think Wizards should be much more liberal with their bannings and their unbannings. Try to fix formats. Try to make formats better. If it doesn't work, put it back in or take it back out.
Yeah. So what we're gonna do real quick is we're gonna go. There's one of the events on our list here that was prior to the Pro Tour. And that was, actually there were, the Pro Tour was on June 1st. So on May 27th, there was a standard PTQ on Magic Online. So, I mean, what we see here is kind of what I think would have been a really solid Pro Tour top 8. It was won by Blue White Control. There's 2 Golgari Constrictor lists there. There's 3 of the red aggro decks that we're talking about. There's a New Perspectives deck and a Wizards aggro deck.
Oh, those are fun.
Yeah, and so it's kind of interesting that so So prior to the Pro Tour, we weren't inundated with all of these red decks. And we're also getting all of our stats here from mtgtop8.com. They basically just compile lists from different events. So if you would like, you can go to MTG Top 8 and kind of follow along with this a little bit. And then so immediately... Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, yeah. So that's the double-edged sword with the Pro Tour. You have the best Magic players playing at the highest level. But two, these guys all know each other. A lot of these guys that are in the top 8 are on the same team, and they're all playing the same deck. So I mean, they're gonna solve it. Again, I'm a big Modern guy. Prior to Eldrazi Winter, no one was talking Eldrazi being as strong as they were. I mean, the Eldrazi deck with Eye of Ugin and Eldrazi Temple was kind of a fringe Modern deck. Then all of a sudden it shows up at the Pro Tour and just steamrolls people. And I think it was Corbin, or I can't remember it was a pro talking about the no ban list Modern at the Star City Open.
Much Eldrazi. Much Eldrazi. Yeah.
So again, I mean, it's one of those things. The way that the pros work now is they figure out the format, and either if they're working together or they're not, you can kind of pounce on where the deck is going to be really good. And once everybody sees that, I mean, they're going to copy. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I net deck all the time. I follow very much of the Saffron Olive mentality of I can't write music, but I love playing my guitar. Same thing. I don't have time to brew and all that kind of stuff. I love to play Magic. So I'm just going to go find the deck. I'm going to find the cards. I'm going to put it together.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Sorry not to cut you off there, but
no.
I think that's a lot of what the format is, honestly. And like you're saying, a lot of us don't get paid to play Magic. And we don't have those hours to just sit there and beat your head against the wall that is the format until you can crack it. So I think it's healthy that people put their own tweaks on this deck. I've seen different variations of it, and I like that. I don't like playing the same matchup every round, and I don't think anybody does. But net decking is going to exist. It's always going to exist, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I just think having it tempered with your own brews is a great way to go about it. And if that makes it better or worse, who's to say? But I still think there is a way to net deck and put your own spin on it, where you're not just playing the same cardboard cutout of every deck. So
no, absolutely, 100% agree.
One thing that I was wanting to bring up. So we actually had quite a bit of time between the release of Dominaria, which was April 27th, until the Pro Tour, which was the 1st of June. So we had over a month between when the set released and the Pro Tour, and we see here with this PTQ. That we're not inundated with, at least with this top 8, we're not inundated with these red lists. Do you think that maybe if the Pro Tour was sooner, like closer to the release, that we wouldn't have seen as many of these red decks?
I mean, that's hard to say. I don't know how early the pros were on this red deck, and without having seen an earlier event from them, you don't know. I have to believe there would have been a couple of them on there. I mean, the whole cycle of creatures that were the 3 of this mana and are pretty insane. Still Leaf Champion, Chain Whirler being the ones that I'm talking about mostly. I think you probably would have seen a few more of them on that mono green Stompy list had this had taken place a little bit closer, because I think that's a good matchup for the red deck if it can get going fast enough. But I don't know. I think it was always going to end up here just because of where Standard is right now and the cards that have been allowed to get into Standard. And I almost want to blame the whole crazy rotations schedule for this. I think if things had rotated like they were originally going to, and we didn't have Kaladesh mixed in with Dominaria, that we would be somewhere completely different. But I still think red, like I've said over and over, I think it's just in the best spot right now. And until something comes along to upset that, it's going to continue to dominate the format.
And we have, 3.5 months before rotation now?
October the 5th is the next rotation.
Actually, if you follow Saffron Olive on Twitter, he has a countdown every day. He says 114 days until Kaladesh rotates. It's hilarious.
Which is a shame because it goes back to what I was saying. So it's essentially 114 days before I can play standard and actually brew decks and not play one of these 5 stock builds and at least be competitive. If that's the case, just take a large hammer to it and start beating the heck out of it and ban stuff out to fix the format.
Yeah, and you have people like me and Hunter that just like playing Merfolk, and we're gonna play Merfolk no matter what because that's what we like. And basically, not that Wizards is specifically pointing at us and saying you cannot play what you want, but just with how the cards have been pushed and how power is placed in certain areas. Merfolk just wasn't on the receiving end of the power.
Right, and I think Wizards is trying to shy away from that a little bit more. I remember when the Smuggler's Copter / Aether Marvel Works bans were coming down with Emrakul, and everybody was freaking out. Like, no 2 cards have been banned since JTMS and like Stoneforge Mystic. It's the end of the world in Standard, and like I think Wizards is trying to push back against that a little bit, going, no, guys, Standard is okay. We're not going to ban your cards. You're not going to lose all this money that you invested in Aetherworks Marvel. Like, it's going to be okay. And I think that the format suffers a little bit because of that. Wizards has tried to find this healthy balance of trying to ban for a healthy format and trying not to scare people out of the secondary market. And I don't know. I mean, I think the format has suffered a little bit for it, but I can't blame them for doing that. At the end of the day, they're a business, and that's what they're going to do. So, will we see another ban? I highly doubt it, but I kind of wish we would.
The thing about that argument, though, is the cards we're talking about knocking out aren't super expensive. I mean, Chain Whirler's about a $5-6 card. So if it gets banned out, I mean, you're out $20. Now, I know for like a high school kid who's just play standard or a poor college student, $20 is $20 and it stinks. But it's not like we're talking banning Karn or banning Teferi, who are $40-50 cards and you'd be out 200.
Sure, and I see that, but and by the way, if you find high school kids that have the budget to play standard, I want to meet them because standard has been all over the map lately as far as prices go, and I love the challenger decks for that, by the way. They're helping this, but yeah, I agree. You're not losing a ton with your investment there, but I still think Wizards is like they just want to let the dust settle a little bit. We just came out of some of the most bannings we've ever seen in standard. You had to think, the cat combo got banned, the Emrakul banning, the Copter banning. Like they've been pretty ban heavy lately. And I say that ban heavy in the context of the history of Standard, which isn't much. So I think they just want to let the dust settle a little bit and let everybody kind of get their feet underneath them. And if the format suffers for it, then we suffer for a little while. I don't know. I don't see it happening.
So going into real quick, right after the Pro Tour on the 3rd of June, there was another MTGO Standard PTQ, and there was only one red deck in the top 8.
That's wild. That is wild.
Now, what I think is symptomatic, or what this shows, is that is that people were actively aware that red deck wins, black red aggro, whatever you want to call it, is the deck to beat, and people kind of sideboarded better, against those decks. And one thing that a lot of people like Saffron Olive and Chris Van Meter and people like that were talking about were the control decks were kind of had sideboards that were built in the Pro Tour, at least, to combat other control decks, because we had people saying, oh, Karn is going to be so good, Teferi's going to wreck house, and basically like they were fighting against other control decks and not necessarily as prepared for how quick and how dominating the red decks were going to be. I mean, do you guys have anything really to say about it? I mean, Golgari Constrictor, Dimir Midrange, God Pharaoh's Gifts. There's 2 decks of that. 3 total Golgari Constrictor decks. I mean, those are just good decks.
Yeah, Golgari Constrictor is another deck that I've played in Standard a lot here lately. I do own Golgari Constrictor, and I love that deck. I think it's pretty competitive, even still in this format of just red everywhere. It does what it needs to do. It's going to lose a ton of pieces when Kaladesh rotates. The snakes are gone. The ballistas are gone. The main core of that deck is gone. So it's going to be pretty decimated when rotation comes along. But these other decks I've seen quite a bit of. The God's Pharaoh's Gift. Like that deck is, I don't want to call it fun. It's something to watch. That thing grinds you to a halt. And they're running to fairies, so they cannot deck themselves. They're gonna get their first approach, and then they're just gonna grind things to a halt by topping whatever permanents you have with Teferi and burying them. And like, it's a grindy format when everything is that kind of control. So I'm not pushing for that at all. That fluctuator deck, if you have time to look at that, that thing is sweet. That's one of the craziest brews I've ever seen. It's all new perspective cycling. You get 7 cards in your hand. All of a sudden, cycling costs 0. You're cycling like Vizier of the Tumbling Sands to untap your permanents, and you just try to go wild. If Astral Glide ever gets reprinted in like the same time we have new perspectives, that would have been the coolest thing I've ever seen, but we weren't so lucky. Dimir Midrange is actually becoming a deck that I see a lot of, and the reason that deck is still around is because of Scarab God. And that's another card that's rotating out soon. And everybody kind of slept on Scarab God when Red just went nuts. But I have seen it so much in the past, like week and a half, 2 weeks. Scarab God is showing back up in a big way. People are running blue-black control with like Liliana Death Majesty and Scarab God and just draining you every turn with the Scarab God trigger. And that deck is really a good matchup against the mono red deck because you're making these smaller creatures back into 4/4 zombies and you're building this wall basically. So there are things out there to combat the red. This is not the red apocalypse, but what are you gonna do? The numbers speak for themselves. We're looking at tournaments before and after, and red just exploded.
Yeah, and I mean, Matt, do you have anything to add to these standings here?
No, I mean it all makes sense. The decks are kind of the murderer's row that you would expect to see right now. So again, we have my big thing is we have lot more cards to see spoiled in core, and I'm hoping that we have maybe something that's going to come up and just kind of really throw it on its head, like maybe how about this, a reprint of Conversion. All mountains are plains.
Just turn off the deck.
Just turn off
the perfect
deck.
Sideboard card.
Everybody starts playing white, or something. I mean, I'm kidding, but or something along the lines of like Path to Exile in Standard.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a house. I don't know.
Well, no, but I'm just trying to think
I know
of,
what you mean, yeah.
Things you can put in there that can combat some of the issues we're running into.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people are trying to solve that right now. We saw a couple of weeks ago, and maybe even last week, in one of the tournaments, somebody was playing mono black control. Some of the last time you heard of mono black control. But that deck was pretty sweet. It was running like Noxus Gear Hulks, Vraska's Contempts, Cast Downs, Fatal Pushes, like the whole removal suite, the whole 9 yards. And I don't think that deck is too bad post-rotation. You still have your Vraska's Contempts. You still have your Cast Downs. They probably end up mainboarding like Guzzle Knock, just like a gas to keep drawing cards, to keep them in against control and things like that. So like people are getting creative. People are branching out and seeing what they can find that matches up well against these decks. The problem is right now, there's just not a lot of answers. And I know it's kind of sad that we're all just like marking our calendars for October 5th, but people are going to keep trying to get creative. I still think you're going to see the onesies and twosies break through, like this new perspectives, like the Dimir control. But overall, it's the future is red for the time being.
So real quick before we close out here, we had Grand Prix Copenhagen, which was on the 10th of June. 6 of the 8 top decks were some version of Chain Whirler Red, and then we had 2 blue-white control decks. So I mean, this is kind of something we'd expect at a Grand Prix. You're going to see higher level players. You're going to see people playing to win. You know, like you're not going to bring your homebrew to a Grand Prix unless you're Johnny Crass and you bring your Bant's dubious challenge deck to Grand Prix Vegas for some reason. But it's one of those things that, you know, the average player is not going to take, you know, their janky, you know, super combo deck that requires 5 cards to go off. They're gonna bring the deck that can bring the pain, and that right now is Chain Whirl Red.
Yeah, I mean, for the time being, until core is completely spoiled, it's going to be mono red with a splash of blue white control because Teferi is so good. Again, it's kind of a sports analogy. You hear this a lot in like tennis or in golf. You pick the best player, and it's like the best player or the field. And at this point, if I'm betting on the mono red deck versus any other deck in standard to win any tournament, I'm going to bet all my money on the mono red deck. I will not take the field.
Yeah, I mean,
no, and that's the safe bet, honestly. Like, there, like I said, there are decks that are going to steal games off of it. There are decks that are always going to be those onesies and twosies that these people like sit at home and think tank how to beat mono red or red black. But at the end of the day, you're right. Just because of the law of large numbers and how good of a deck it is, you're going to see a lot of red decks in the top 8. And, you know, I can always hope that there's going to be a deck that shows up that can contend with that. But
and that's not to say that every single major tournament, the red deck's going to win every single one. We're going to see some other random decks pop up and win.
Absolutely.
A few here or there. But, I mean, more often than not, I think the red one has it for the time being.
So, like, just for perspective, so there were 460 players in Pro Tour Dominaria, and 35% of the meta was Chain Whirler red decks. So
Wizards.
That's, you know, and I mean, that's the type of percentages we're looking at for a deck to dominate the top 8 and definitely the top 16. I don't have the top 16 list in front of me, but I can only imagine that most of it was Chain Whirler decks.
If that was happening in Modern, the Banhammer would be coming out.
Yeah. So one other thing, last thing before we go into our closing statements and all that, the next banned and restricted announcement is July 2nd. Over under, boys. Chain Whirler.
I'm saying no.
Getting the ban or not?
I'm saying no. I just don't think Wizards really wants to have another standard banning, to be honest. I think they want to leave it alone, let people regain some of their confidence in the format, whatever that means. And I don't think they're going to touch it. Honestly, I don't.
I completely disagree. I think the answer is yes. I think Wizards has been showing recently that they have zero problem changing formats and changing their meta to assist and make the game more level across multiple variations of ways people like to play. So I think this is the new norm. I think Standard and Modern are going to see a lot more bannings and unbannings.
And I personally think that we could see this get banned. Like, I'm not saying that it's a for sure thing, but I mean, we saw this with the Ramanap red decks, right? With Rampaging Ferocidon, which is basically just as damaging, if not more damaging, than Goblin Chain Whirler is. And I mean, it's one of those things that, you know, we could see Wizards going, hey guys, listen, let's all sit down. Like, come on, you know, school circle, like, listen up.
Well, again, I know we're running long, but I think the Ramanop Red is a good example of this. I think that card actually wasn't that bad by itself to deserve a banning.
It's its company. It's the
company, yeah. So I think you could have banned the Ferocidon, left the Ramanop Ruins, and actually had a fine deck minus Chain Whirler ever being printed. So. But I think that was Wizards being like, okay, we really need to shake this up. These two decks have just completely broken our format. Let's knock them both out.
Well, that's what I'm saying is, like, they can say, like, hey guys, come on around. Look, we made a mistake with Rampaging Ferocidon, and by the time we realized how big of a mistake we made with this, Chain Whirler was already in packs. You know, and like we can't ban a card before it comes out. So listen, we made a mistake. sorry, we'll try our best next time, and that's all. Like you said, Matt, they're more willing to make those changes to for the health of the format, and hope.
How awesome would that be if they did ban a card before it came out?
They're like, we're banning Goblin Whip Zapper, and they're like, and we're all like, what? There's a Whip Zapper, and they're like, oh, sorry.
My one caveat is that if they ban Chain Whirler, I think they have to take something from Control, because if not, we're going to time in the rounds every round, and tournaments will be much longer.
I don't disagree, but they're not going to ban Teferi.
No, not Teferi. It'll be something else. But if they ban Chain Whirler, a piece of Control goes with it.
Well, thank you very much, Hunter, for joining us on this episode of Fishin, a Merfolk podcast, where we discussed actually very little about Merfolk and talked largely about red cards. So that's definitely a change for us. Do you have anything you want to close out with before, like where we can reach you and all that fun stuff?
Thank you guys for having me. I'm actually pretty much removed from Twitter these days. Don't have one. You can reach out to me, I guess, on Facebook. I'm kind of secluded there, but I tend to accept people. If you want to talk Magic, I love talking Magic. So if you can tell, I'll talk your ear off. But yeah, hit me up there. Let's talk Merfolk. I will love to join you guys on Discord to talk some more Merfolk. I'm always on Discord. So I look forward to more conversations there, and I'm going to keep playing Tier 2 Fish, man.
The Tier 2 life to the fullest. All right. So, Matt, do you have any closing statements?
I do. I know we're running long. Hunter, are you a graphic artist? Because I know you did our art for us. I've actually haven't had a chance to talk to you before, so
I dabble here and there. That was more my wife's work. I am pretty handy with the Photoshop, but she is far and away much better than I am. So all credit to her on that one.
Which is why
what you're saying is we need to have your wife on next time.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, she even plays a little Magic here and there, so she could get in here and sling with you guys.
We'll have to do a Magic art episode and have her on.
Yeah, that would definitely be cool. It would be kind of a dream for us to get like Jesper Elzing or somebody like that, just to talk about Merfolk art in general. But I mean, thank you very much for you and your wife.
Well, my dream is to have Tessa Pruitt come on and talk Merfolk art with us.
I'll see what I can do.
Well, thank you very much for both of you for doing our artwork for us. We really do appreciate it. I would have quickly thrown something together in MS Paint, and it would have been just terrible, like just a gold, like the goldfish cracker ad or something. It would be awful. You can reach us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook as FishcastMTG. I'm personally not Kody Smith on Twitter. Matt, where can we find you?
I'm at Matthew Caudill 8.
And Hunter's already talked about where you can reach him, and we'll probably stick him in our Fishin Discord as a honorary Fishcast member for doing the art for us. If you have a longer form question or want to contact us for anything else, feel free to contact us as fishcastmtg@gmail.com. And again, support us on Patreon. Even $1 a month helps us grow. And no offense to you and your wife, Hunter, but we are working with a professional to get some headers for our accounts and get some high-end art and do some fun stuff with that, play mats and all that. So again, our cover art was made by Tessa and Hunter Pruitt, our guest. And if you like what we're doing here, please rate and subscribe in the Apple or Google Play podcast app for literally 0 space bucks. That's the best part. You can do it for free, and it helps us out so much. Thank you very much for listening, and we will talk to you all next week.
Have a good night, everyone.
All right.
So I have to say that I was kind of dreading this because I hate talking standard, but that was a ton of fun. Thank you so much.
Oh, guys, I love it. Thanks for having me on.